Fem una prova a veure si podeu traduir a ell.
Hello, hello, can you hear me? The interpreter speaking, I hope you can hear me. Hello, Chris.
Benvingut.
Hello. Hello and welcome. Welcome to one and all to this very special debate entitled The Quiet American, one of the most well-known novels by Graham Greene. We're speaking about America, New York, Chicago, Baltimore, New Orleans, you know, all ovnis end up landing in Washington, D.C., but in the US, they kill nicely. You know, they really know the business of killing. They carry it in their DNA. Oh, by the way, in fiction, I'm speaking about fiction here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they are a violent society. They are quiet. Americans are quiet. So on the other side of the Atlantic, from the other side of the Atlantic, we welcome Chris OFFUT, author of different articles, non-fiction articles, novels, articles published in the New York Times, Oxford American. He's also written scripts, and amongst his work, we could underline The Killing Hills or Shifty's Boys, and today we'll have the pleasure of having this debate with MIQUEL Molina, who is also a writer. Let me remind you that once the debate is over, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy it very much, he will be outside signing books for you, signing copies of his book for you. So go ahead, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for this very kind presentation, and good afternoon to one and all. When I start a debate or a conference, this BCNegra, I try to find a parallel between the title of the conference and the book that is presented and the author. And in this specific case, The Quiet Man, well, I don't really know Chris OFFUT very much, even if he looks like a quiet man, apparently. So if we look sharply at the topic in his work, well, I can't really find a parallel with Graham Greene, unless mentioning that the main character of the three novels, Mick Hardin series, well, we could say that due to his work in the Middle East, he would be doing something similar to what the protagonist of The Quiet Man would do in Vietnam. This is the parallel I can find. I would like to thank the organizers of this amazing festival for having allowed me to dig into this genre. And I've traveled through a journey to Kentucky, where the action of these last novels take place in his return to fiction and in his return to the crime fiction. The last novel, published in Spain, The Coat of Hills, well, the author recovers a previous title that we'll be speaking about also. The same editorial company has published the previous book, which is the last delivery of a series whose main character is Harvey, a researcher of the US Army, who has a peculiar way of, let's say, spending his holidays or his leaves when visiting his country of origin. Hello.
Gracias.
It was not supposed to work.
Hello, hello, can you hear me? Testing the interpretation. Hello, hello, can you hear me now? Is it working? It is working now. Hello, hello, any better? A little better. You're welcome. So, let's try it again. Is it working now?
Por favor.
More volume.
Sí.
And I will try to speak louder. So, I've been through an amazing journey around Kentucky, where the action of your last novels take place. Now, the 3 books are available in Spanish also. And, well, I've understood the peculiar way your main character spends his holiday when visiting Linda, his sister, in Kentucky. But after reading your work as a reader, I am not clear about whether this book takes place, the action takes place in the US. I don't think so. Not even in the state of Kentucky, nor in the Appalachians, even if there's plenty of references to the Appalachians. For me, it takes place in a homeland called the Hills, like a random place with blurry borders, like in the hills, which is like a country per se. So this would be my first question, Chris. Where do you really think these characters live? Mick, Linda, and the rest of the characters. How would you define this homeland where the action takes place?
My head. They live in my head. The hills are, they are in the Appalachians, and the hills are distinctly different from the rest of the United States. It's the equivalent would be a domestic colony within, the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So it's. They are definitely in the Appalachians, but it's an extremely different world than anywhere else I've ever been. The closest similar would be Native American reservations in the U.S. out west, the sort of isolation and closed-in culture. But really, they're not real. They're in my head.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Pero
I know. And what I meant by the question is that your characters have a, let's say, problem of lack of belonging, right? They have a certain lack of belonging. If they really belong anywhere, they belong to a specific valley, to a specific village where they have very narrow and closed culture, don't they?
Yes, they belong to, it's where I grew up. And how I feel, and how many of the people that I grew up with feel about their home. There's more animals. There's more hills. There's more trees. So the characters and myself as well, and the people who live there, feel as if our belonging is the hills. It is nature and all of that means, and we are. It's bigger than we are, and more beautiful than we are, but it's also perhaps more savage. Nature is always relentless and brutal, and that influences the people too. So there is the loyalty, there becomes loyalty to family only, because there are no jobs to be loyal to a job, or a sports team. There's no, people become very loyal to their football clubs. There's nothing like that there. It's just family.
So the fact that you spent part of your childhood in Haldeman, a town which doesn't exist anymore, which has been abandoned, does this did this mark the fact that your characters in your work, there's also a certain doubt about belonging, right? When, you know, you lose the place where you grew up, where you belong, doesn't exist. Does it affect your work?
It affects my work, sure. The community that I lived in was 400 people, and progress, you know, civilization means we have water and hard roads, blacktop roads. But there's no, the post office is gone, there's no school, there's a church, a very small little church, but that's it, there's no. So it affected me personally, and with the characters, you know, they're younger than I am, so unfortunately. So their memory of the past is not as strong as mine, and that's why Mick Harden, the protagonist, he grew up with his grandfather, so his grandfather was able to teach him the older ways of living, the older values, the what they call the code of the hills, a way of living with nature and with other people. Mm-hmm. And that's gone for him. So he has his sense of belonging is not as strong as he would like, or as it was, because he left and then came back home. And I think that's true probably in España, where you grow up in a place and you leave, and when you go back, it's different. Or it's the same and you are different. And you no longer belong to what it was because you have become another person. And in my experience, the changes that occur are usually the best things are gone and the worst things have gotten more. You know?
Ha tornat al seu...
Have you been back to your home village?
Many times, yes. I have friends there, a few friends there. I have no more family there. They, you know, I'm the oldest in my family now. So, but yeah, I go back, and I love to go back. But yeah, I have many. I left and moved back 3 times, and until I just had to stay away. There's nothing. There's no jobs. There's no bookstores. There's no art galleries. There's you know, the things that I like, that I'm interested in, is non-existent. But there's no more beautiful place in North America than these woods, the hills.
De fet, ha parlat...
Well, in fact, before you talked about animals, nature, and in your work, in your books, whenever there is an important debate between 2 main characters, oftentimes there is a parallel debate between birds, with lovely short and very interesting description of such bird debates. One next to the other could perhaps make a very interesting book on local birds, right? You really enjoy these parallels and these observations about the nature around you.
Yes, that's Mick Harden, the character, but it's really me. I love birds. Oops, I hit a button. Uh-oh.
Let's try.
Yeah.
Now...
Is it working? Yep.
Sorry. I love birds. I watch birds. Where I live, there's a pond, water, and I spend a lot of time looking at birds. I talk to birds. The birds aren't afraid of me. They come close to me. They know I'm a friend. Same with wild animals. So yes, and then when I write, you're right. I appreciate you noticing that. I do try to have a parallel, maybe not a conversation, but if there's a dispute between 2 humans, there will be something going on with the birds to mirror their that. But there's so many birds. There are more birds in the hills in Appalachia than more variety than anywhere else in the United States. So as a child, they were everywhere, and you know, I loved them.
El seu
So your main character, Mick, is a complex character. His relationship with Linda, his sister, is very interesting and complex. They love each other, they admire each other, but they don't know how to communicate. And, well, I have to ask you, is this a trilogy or only the 3 first books of a very long series?
Well, I don't know how long the series will be, but the 4th book is with my publisher in U.S. And last week I started a 5th book. So maybe there'll be, I don't know how long, how many books will be, but I really love these people. I love the characters and I love the landscape. And you know, I get homesick, you know, longing for home, and I can't really go back and live there now. So when I write about these books, it's a way of visiting home. I can go see the land and the birds and my friends, the characters. I know it may sound a little crazy, but you know, I spend a lot of time alone with these people, and during lockdown under COVID, I spent more time with Mick, Johnny Boy, and Linda than anybody.
de fet,
Interesting. In one of the last 3 books, you in fact go back to a previous history from your first novel that has been now published by Sahalin, The Good Brother, and published here in Spain also. So I guess it's a way to close a circle, right? To close something that was left open from the past.
Thank you for noticing that. Yes, that book was in the United States, was published in '93, I think. So 20 or 30 years ago?
yeah, 30.
30?
Oh, 30.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
Maybe 96.
Everything is 30 years
maybe
ago.
96, so 25 years ago. And you know, he left, and when I was working on the book, I thought, well, what happened to him, right? The land is the same, the names are the same, and everybody's gotten a little older, so I thought, well, I will reintroduce him in this new book 25 years later. He's 25 years older, and he comes back home. He has a reason for it, and it was just it was a way for me to close the story of Virgil, is his name, but also a way to show the passage of time, and also demonstrate the loyalty and the desire to be home. He was a fugitive, so he comes back home after being gone, and it just seemed that it sort of was able to emphasize the pull, this powerful hold that the mountains, the hills have on all the people.
Té molt a veure el desig de...
Is it related to the desire, I mean, the idea of closing this circle? Is it related to the fact that you, such a long time after not having written fiction, have decided to go back to fiction because you've been writing non-fiction scripts for quite a long time? So going back to fiction, is it related to your desire of pushing forward your first novel? I guess many authors have a special care for first novels.
Maybe. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, it could be. I don't think I'm the person to answer that. I think maybe a scholar would be, or an objective reader such as yourself. It makes sense. I wrote during that time. I did not publish. I was always writing, and then and I taught and I raised children, you know, and had to make money and all that stuff. So it was. And now I have more time to do it. So it was really part of that. But and I'm happy to be able to return to fiction. And these characters, like Virgil's Caudle, all of his family still lives there, even though in in real life, everyone still lives there. When I go back home, they're all the same family names, and many of the people still live there. Some of the friends are dead, and some are in prison, but you know, it's the same place. It's just, and the same people. So the characters. Yes, the answer is yes.
Yes. Thanks.
There is a very interesting topic in your work. For me, as a reader, I take certain pleasure with the topic I'm going to mention. Even if your work is surrounded in the current world, technology is not that present, right? And you still find circumstances in which one shows up at somebody's place without previously sending a message. There you need to be careful with dogs, because every time you step out of a car, you need to be careful that a dog is not gonna bite you. But again, it's interesting that you do not, let's say, place technology at the center. It's in the back seat. It's not a main character. Are you aware of that, right?
I'm aware of that, and it is deliberate on my part. I think that, I use technology. I use a laptop and a cell phone and a remote control for the TV. I'm not very good at any of it. But in the hills, the reception is sometimes bad. You know, it can, cell phones don't always work. And also, I did not want to rely on technology. And I see many books and some movies where technology, a cell phone, becomes a trick to move from one scene to another, or you know, you don't know what to do, get on the computer and, oh, what do you know? The FBI says this, or it's over there. So, but I couldn't ignore technology. So Mick Harden, the protagonist, he has a cell phone, but he keeps it in his truck, in the glove box, you know. And that was just it was deliberate on my part, because I don't know much about technology. I'm not that interested in learning about it in order to use it, and it's not that prevalent, you know, in the mountains, in the hills, because of the hills block reception. Thank you. Gracias. And I'm not convinced that technology is our friend, even though I've got all this stuff hooked up to my head right now.
De fet, el seu protagonista fa alguna cosa.
Well, in fact, your main character, your protagonist, doesn't really carry his phone on him, but he asks his secretary to check out the GPS for him, which is a comfortable way of not intermingling with technology and allowing others to do it for you.
Yes, I would like to have somebody to do that. Yesterday, I took a walk in Barcelona, and I walked 7 kilometers because I was lost, and my phone GPS did not work, and I couldn't make it work. After 7 kilometers, I just got a cab.
7 quilòmetres, fins on va arribar?
So where did you get?
Oh, I walked all over the place.
És el seu primer viatge.
Is it your first time? Well, you told me it's your first time in Spain.
Yes, my first time in Spain, and I thought I'd take a little walk after the airplane. Barcelona is a beautiful city, and I thought, well, it'll be like the woods, like a landmark. That's how I use when I walk. Okay, here's an old church that's being renovated.
Yes.
That's my landmark. And I go a little bit further, and here's another old church that's being renovated.
Couple of them.
And then a little further, and another one. So I thought, okay, won't do that. I will find here's a plaza. All right, here's my landmark. And a little further, another plaza. And plus I'm looking at the buildings, and it was a good walk.
És exactament com els seus personatges.
So it's like your characters when they try to find their way around, right?
Agafen coordenades semblants.
Yes. If I had a lot of money, I would just have a driver that,
com tenen els protagonistes.
Like your main characters.
Una cosa interessant, hi ha
Something quite interesting, very interesting, now going to a serious topic, your approach about vengeance. Other authors or filmmakers use vengeance as a tool or as a means so that the reader develops a certain empathy with the main character and desires vengeance, whereas it's not your case. In your case, in your work, vengeance is different, especially in the case of Mick Hardin, who has a difficult relationship with vengeance. He knows that he has to revenge, but he doesn't really like revenging.
Yes, that's similar to the way I feel. The hills are the closed-in world, small, and family loyalties, and everyone knows your business. And it's what they call feud country. I don't know if that word is in Spanish, a feud between two families that can go on for decades. Yes. Of vengeance and vengeance and vengeance. And
sí, también.
And I think it's not a great idea. It doesn't help anybody. And the people I know who actually accomplished vengeance, achieved revenge, they're not happier for it. You know, it doesn't do anything for them. But it's still deeply embedded in the hill culture. And now Mick Hardin, the protagonist, has been out and was a soldier, and so he just doesn't want to be around violence anymore, even if he has to do it sometimes. He knows the folly of violence, and mainly he doesn't even want to be a law enforcement officer. He just wants to keep anybody from killing somebody else. He's done with it. So that's part of how he sees this vengeance, and that is at odds often with the culture of the hills, but it's also how I see it.
There is another topic, a quite philosophical topic in your work, which is that your main character, Mick, oftentimes misses his military life. In case you didn't know, well, not you, the audience that is. So the action happens when he's in a sick leave as a result of a wound, and he somehow misses the foreseeable element of the military life, right? Like if he missed the military life where everything is rigid and you're told what to do. You were about to enroll into the US Army at some point in your life, and you were not admitted. You were not accepted. Do you have a certain nostalgia, or do you have the feeling that you would have had a better life with this very orderly life where decisions are taken for you?
I don't know if it would be better or not. I was 18 and I left school and joined the Army because I wanted to get away from my father. And everyone was happy to see me go. So, but I failed the physical on a technicality. And so I went to college. I went to university. I had no choice. I didn't want to just keep working at these terrible jobs. So it's not nostalgia, but I've often wondered if I had been in if I had been able to join the Army afterwards, like what kind of soldier I would have been. I think I could have been a good soldier because I needed structure and discipline, or I could have been the worst soldier possible and gotten thrown out. So Mick Hardin is kind of me if I had been able to join the Army and if I were strong and courageous and tough, like, you know, like my character is. So it's not really nostalgia, but I do think about it quite a bit.
De fet,
Oh, I had something in the tip of my tongue, but now it skipped. Your description about the military life proves that you have been very well advised about the military life, right? And in fact, you acknowledge someone who advised you on the military world. And for those of us who are not aware of what it takes to be a soldier in the US Army, it's very interesting to learn about it through your work. So I'm sure you've been very well advised. How did this work? Who advised you?
Friends of mine. You know, the military in you know, the United States. The United States loves to go to war, and goes to war too much. And because it makes money. So there's a lot of men and women who join the military, and I have friends who've come back, and some were disgruntled soldiers, but there's one, a Marine Scout sniper, good friend of mine who I've talked to a lot, and a member of the 82nd Airborne paratrooper, and other people, you know, and there's they recruit in the U.S. I don't know, do they do it here? They actively, there's an office where they actively try to get young people to join. And I've gone in and talked to them and said, look, I'm a writer. This is what I've got going. Does this make sense? Is it plausible? And the guy, the sergeant, the recruiting officer, just listened very intently, and he said, yes, yes, that's exactly what happened to me. And I had just made it up, but because it seemed like it might be a situation with Mick Harden and his wife. So it's a combination of invention and research, and then talking to people who know more than I do.
A banda de
Indeed, and beyond your references to the military world, you include in your work also some quotes from the Wild West culture, the American Wild West culture, and some dialogues are quite alike to those of the Westerns, and the situations that happen when you step into a bar or a pub and you are an outsider and the clients stare at you, there's a terrible silence in the pub, right? So there's a certain element of a certain Western characteristic, let's say. Are you a fan of Westerns?
I've watched the novels and the movies, or both?
Yes.
Yes, both. There's hundreds, there's too many. There's thousands of Western novels. There's maybe 20 good ones. I like them. But I think that this thing of where you go into a bar and you're not, and nobody knows you, you are a stranger. And that may happen in small villages in Spain, where yes, I would assume where you walk in, and if they don't know you, they are suspicious, right? What is this guy doing here? And I encountered that in New York City, in Boston, and I went to an Irish pub with a broke down car, and boy, they did not want to even let me use the telephone because they did not know me. So I think it might be, I don't know if it's peculiar to America or small areas, but it does, there is, and especially if it's a tough place, a tough bar, which are always the most interesting, you know.
The difference between what you say exactly, well, here it happens also, right? When you're a foreigner and you step into a place, you are received in a hostile way. But what made me think about Westerns is that in the bars you describe, everyone carries a gun. And it's not the case here.
Well, you're talking about in the Detroit bar, right? The bar,
yeah, the Detroit bar is terrible.
Yeah, yes. My son lives in Detroit, so I go to visit him, and and I go to the real tough bars, and nobody bothers me. I'm little, you know, I can talk. I'm not a quiet American, you know. I like to talk, and I will talk and I can be funny, and so there's no trouble. But yes, unfortunately, America there's too many guns there, and not everybody carries a gun. But it's more interesting to write about a place where people are armed. Even the women are armed. Shifty. She carries a little. My mother never carried a gun, but she in her purse, she carried an ice pick. Do you know what an ice pick, right? Like a nail with a handle. Yeah, and she had it in a cork, like from a wine bottle, and that was her weapon. She carried it in her purse her whole life. And I said, "Mom, why do you carry this?" And she said, "Your uncle told me. Always carry this." And the cork was rotted. But there is a, I don't know how to explain it, because in one way makes perfect sense to me, and another way it's a very foreign idea. But there's this idea of self-protection that many Americans feel, and I think it's because we're a young country, and the European, immigrants came, and it's a big country, and there was natives were hostile. They did not want to see the pioneers, and there were big animals to have to deal with, and so I think that's part of it. And then there was, of course, the Civil War. So it's ingrained in American culture a little bit, and I like to write about it, because if you're writing about a place where everyone is armed, it just increases the drama, it intensifies potential, and that's more fun for me as a writer, frankly. But don't worry, not everybody carries a gun.
Y segurament.
And probably the average of murders that take place in your work, if the surrounding was, I don't know, a valley in the Pyrenees, would be a little bit lower, right? There would be less of a death rate because there would be less available weapons, I'm guessing.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
No, que imagino que.
No, what I said was the fact that many people carry guns in the US means that the amount of deaths that happen in your work is higher than if the action took place somewhere in Europe where there are less available weapons.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I think it can be. If you have a weapon, the problem is at some point you will use that weapon. And so I have 3 guns, just for the record. But they are family guns. I have my grandfather's rifle from the Great Depression. He used it to kill rabbit and squirrel to eat. I have my father's shotgun, shotgun, I don't know, and my uncle's little pistol, and they just came to me, they're like family heirlooms. So I have them locked up in a closet, and I will give them to my sons. So it's America has a curious relationship with guns, but, and I would like to just really emphasize this. Well, we're also the first country, a new young country, and we were founded after the invention of gunpowder, right? If you think about that, that makes a big difference. Spain is an older country, and people fought with swords and knives and lances, right? And I guess catapults. So I'm not to excuse it, but I'm saying that the gunpowder, the invention of gunpowder, with the settlers had it, infused this idea into American culture a little deeply. Now, at the same time, I think citizens should not have access to military weapons. And that's the problem we have in the United States with guns. That's the biggest problem of all.
I have another question for you, which is, during your studies, you attended a course on creative writing, and one of your teachers was James Salter. So it seems like there are amazing creative writing academies here in Barcelona as well. I would like to know, what would you say to someone who is hesitating on whether to taking a course on creative writing or not? You had a good experience. Would you recommend enrolling into a creative writing course?
Yes, if you want to write, it's a good place to start. My recommendation would be have something you want to write. You know, a lot of people would like to be a writer, but they don't have a story. And that they want to write, and it just takes a burning desire to write, and requires great discipline, commitment and discipline, like the structure of the military. But yes, I think, you know, maybe a class would be helpful to find out if it's really what you want to do, in the same way that I would say, you know, take religion classes or philosophy classes if you maybe were interested in becoming a priest, right? You wouldn't just, I would think, just not jump in, or you know, or be a sailor if you wanted a boat, work on a boat. So that would, or a chef. Want to be a chef? Get a job as a dishwasher. So why not? Why not? Is my thinking. Can't hurt, might help.
So as a writer, do you think that the rapid expansion of artificial intelligence is a threat?
I don't...
No particularment per vostè, perquè...
Not for you, of course, because you've had a long and solid career, but...
Not as a writer, I think it's a threat. I just think it as a threat, as a human being. Yes, artificial intelligence, what? We've got that in all of our politicians already, in every country. So yes, I think it's artificial intelligence. It can be a threat. I think it's something to try to learn more about. My son sent me something that he asked one of the artificial intelligence things. He said to write in the style of Dad, in Chris Offutt, and then he sent it to me, and I thought, this is BS, you know, this is not right. But the fact that it could make a few small references to the woods or a bird, you know, it was in these early stages. I mean, how can we stop progress? You know, people thought when movies added sound, right? They thought it was terrible, you know. And when television came along, people thought it was terrible. And when rock and roll came, people thought it was terrible. So there's always going to be motion forward, and there will always be people who think it's terrible. And in some cases, it is. I just think artificial intelligence needs to be. My concern is that we rely on it too much. That's it. But, you know, I also read a lot of science fiction in which robots take over, right? Androids, they just... So, I don't want that either.
If you were a teacher in a creative writing academy, what would you tell your students on the use of artificial intelligence as a tool to support their writing? Do you think it would be acceptable?
I could tell them anything because I don't know anything about it. I really am know very little about it. So I could not advise my students on something that I am ignorant of. I couldn't do it. I'm sure it's coming, and I'm sure that's, you know, I think if anything, people will use it to plagiarize, you know, to not do the work. But again, I know nothing about it. I just think the concept of it, you know, more, it's like, okay, I'm glad that I'll be dead before it really takes over. Gracias.
Vostè com a
And as someone who has written successful scripts for films and series, I am sure you are also concerned, like script writers in Hollywood, who are somehow striking against artificial intelligence, because of course there are bad practices amongst producers or production companies.
I mean, you all go to movies, I go to movies. They're very formulaic, very, very formulaic. And humans can learn the formula easily. I learned it, and wrote it. And I had not watched television since 1972, when I quit because I didn't want to be around the family of my dad who got drunk and watched television. So it's a formula, and the Hollywood is concerned about it because a formula can be learned by artificial intelligence. And I understand their concerns, but my answer to that is, really, if you're worried about that, write better. Write better movies. Make them so they're not predictable, right? You know what's going to happen, always. Almost 90% of the time when I watch a movie, I can say the lines along with the actors, right? And I know what's going to happen. So write a better movie and you don't have to worry about it. That's my... Thank you.
Ara que ja entrem a la...
Now, another question. In May 2020, you offered an interview to La Vanguardia, the newspaper I work for. I think it was an online interview as a result of COVID, and Nuria Skour, the journalist from our newspaper, asked you about the American elections that were to take place in November 2020. And you answered that you didn't think that Donald Trump could win the elections back in 2020. So you were right. Now, February 24, again, the elections are about to take place in the US. Do you think Donald Trump will win the next American elections?
No. He will not win. He lost once already. And he didn't get more votes after losing. He got fewer. No, he will not win. He's dangerous, not just to America, to the concept of democracy and to the world. But no, he will not win. I mean, the guy's faced 90 lawsuits, for crying out loud.
Vostè sap que últimament estan sorgint...
Well, but recently there are reasonable doubts about Joe Biden's option as an alternative.
Joe Biden will be the next president.
No, això és un titular...
Yes.
Wow, this is an interesting headline.
Old, right? And old people sometimes have a little memory problems. I do. And I'm not even that doggone old, right? But so what? He's got a lot of advisors. He's not up there by himself, right? And he's a good-hearted man, I think. He's a good-hearted man. So don't worry, he'll win.
Bueno, serà interessant.
So it will be interesting if you are back in 4 years' time with a new books. We'll ask you exactly the same question, because I am sure that Donald Trump will be up in the race again in 4 years' time.
I hope not, but yes, in 2028 I'll come back and you can ask me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe I'll run for president.
Què passaria?
So what would happen in the valley? What do people vote there?
In the valley?
Bueno,
In the hills? In Kentucky?
Trump is popular with poor people, which is amazing to me, because he's the opposite. But people who have no voice, such as people in the hills of Kentucky, they have no voice, they have no power, they have no political power, they have no money. They respond to a strong man. And America has just not, we have not had a fascist. I think most other countries have gone through having a fascist leader, right? My history is bad. Franco, does he count? Okay. Mussolini in Italy, right? Germany, South Africa, I mean, other countries. So we don't have any experience with withstanding and fighting off these fascistic tendencies. And I think that's what we're experiencing. And so far, I believe that democracy is holding and the American people are responding well. So I believe in it. But I also believe in democracy. Not so much the capitalism, that's the bad part of the whole thing. But, you know, yeah. But one person, one vote. So what, politics, really?
Molt bé, doncs ho deixo.
Amazing. We're gonna leave it here. You've thrown a couple of interesting headlines. One, a new book is about to see the light, and the second good news is that Donald Trump is gonna lose the elections. So, amazing. Beautiful closing.
Thank you. Gracias, gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Gràcies.